Hey guys, it's Mike. Today I want to talk to you about the inevitability that the final split, the final discard will come. So let me be clear. This is a channel for um, partners or ex-partners of somebody who has borderline personality disorder. Bear in mind, there's all different kinds of or variations of borderline personality disorder. It's on a spectrum. There are people with borderline tendencies, and then there are people who are full blown borderlines. I am not a borderline. So I can only talk from whatever intuitive powers I have and whatever observations and whatever explanations that I've come up in order to help myself heal. So bear in mind, there's a lot of people who come on this channel who are borderlines, and it's important to understand that I may be getting it wrong. I ask you to be indulgent. It's okay with me that I don't get it right. What's most important for me is that I explain it in a way that codependents can hear, digest, and then give them the strength to separate and heal. I'm also not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a counselor in that I'm a spiritual counselor, but I'm not a licensed healthcare or mental health professional. So bear that in mind. Um, I'm just somebody who has achieved a state of recovery after having been in a really horrific, toxic relationship with a borderline. And I'm just here to help others and to help myself in that process. All right, so this is one thing about borderline personality disorder that I think is unique in that you can go for years apparently. So my relationship was fairly wasn't very long, and I think there are two reasons for that. One, I believe, now in hindsight and having done some research and remembering a lot of things that she did, I think she was an extreme case, like very seriously borderline. And I think she had many other things going on as well, which compounded it and made it even worse. Bottom line is she wasn't able to function. She had some really, really serious problems. So I think the intensity and the extent of her mental illness made it so that she wouldn't have been capable of having a long-term relationship with me for sure, probably with anybody. And that's the other thing. You never really know what the truth was. You never know. You hear them talk about their past, but after having been with one, and I know that there are, in one case, there was 3 whole weeks that were completely gone from her memory. She didn't remember accurately what happened the day before. So there's no way to know. She was obviously looking back on the past with whatever twist or spin she had left over, which by then, after the split, she will have talked herself into something that was most likely not accurate, perhaps extremely inaccurate to what was actually happening. So I think that played into it, the reason why I wasn't with her for that long. The other one is that I've done a lot of work. I've been in therapy for a long time. I've been in 12-step groups. I've done a lot of work on myself. And so I had enough energy that when it became clear to me after doing some research and finding out, my gosh, she's got borderline. Once I came to that conclusion, it took everything in me. Trust me, it wasn't easy to do. Everything in me wanted me to stay in that relationship and to keep it going and to keep, being the doormat and everything. But I had enough. The pain was bad enough, and I had enough awareness. Like one time I was asking myself, okay, if I was my own counseling client, what would I tell myself? And I would say, you've got to lay down some boundaries. So I did, and I went to her and I said, if you want to be my friend, if you want me in your life on any level, you have to go get therapy from a psychologist who deals with borderline personality disorder. And she went back and forth on that for probably a couple of months, and then finally perfectly timed it on Christmas. Boom. I mean, just split on me, devalued me, betrayed my trust in the worst way possible anybody could, in my experience. So that is what the extreme intensity of that made me go, whoa. I thought I knew what borderline was. I'd been reading up on it. If she just gets help, it'll all be okay. Yes, it's difficult, but I'll be there for her. And, she just needs to see this. But when I experienced it, and then the aftermath and how she had literally, was looking insane and acting insane, and like I didn't even know who she was. That's what made me go, this isn't just a psychological trauma issue. This is a mental illness. This person is not home. She's not there. And that helped me to finally leave. So when she discarded me that last time, I had enough strength and sense to then close the door behind me, block every possible access route to me so that she couldn't get to me. And I've been there ever since. So what I want to focus on here is that I'm reading about people who have been in relationships with borderlines for years. And yes, it's very tumultuous, and there's a lot of splitting and a lot of, destruction and all that, but the relationship is still there. That doesn't mean anything. If they're borderline and they're untreated, and they are, at least from my experience, an extreme borderline, then there will come a time. It may not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be this year or next year, but it will come. And then the final split will come. And it will be, in my experience, at the worst possible time ever, in the worst way. So I want to read a comment left. Bear in mind, if you leave a comment the whole world can see, I assume you're open to have me discuss it. In this case, I just want to support somebody. But if I see somebody who's I think is in denial, I'm going to point it out to you. If somebody is passive aggressive, I'm going to point that out to you. This isn't one of those. This is just somebody who's I relate to, which is what I wanted to share about. So this person says, I was married to a borderline 6 years. She left a week before Christmas. She started idealizing a new friend, and I started to get more and more devalued. It must have been horrible to live through. I mean, just having it drag on like that. 5 months later, holy crap. 5 months later, she up and left and set up home with this friend before Christmas. Before Christmas, how horrible. Pics all over Facebook, etc., like she's loving her best life whilst I'm broken. And then he says, I think it's a he. There is a vindictive twist of the knife they seem to need to do, despite me never having knowingly hurt her, even supporting her as she walked out the door. So I want to just echo that, because that is very similar to what happened to me. What happened with me was, I've got a thing. I've had it my whole life, which is the two worst days of the year for me are Christmas and my birthday. Because those are the days of the year that you're supposed to have the people who love you, and you're supposed to be surrounded with love. And, my parents were not dysfunctional, alcoholic and codependent and abusive and all of that. And they would forget my birthday on a regular basis. And Christmas we would celebrate it, but it was a horrible time because I had to be with these really horrible people. And I would look and see all these other happy families with people that loved them. And even to this day, people get birthday parties. I mean, it's awful. So those are the two worst days of the year for me already. Now, I'm with this borderline. We've been going back and forth. She's now said she's going to get help. She had just spent the day, I think, the day before, she invited me over and she sat me down and looked so rational and said, I did this and this and this to you, and you didn't deserve that, and I know I've got a problem, and I've changed on people before. I'm going to go to therapy. Thank you for being there for me. And thanks for helping me. And, you're my friend, and I promise I'm going to be, a better partner, and we'll see what happens, and blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, I was in a lot of pain because she had done a lot of really horrible things for like 3 weeks in a row. So feeling safe because she had apologized and seemingly consciously acknowledged in a really, really conscious way, in a really clear, conscious, rational way, I thought, oh, she's made some progress. She's going to be okay. Now we can start to have a real connection. And so I went over to see her, and I shared with her all of my feelings that I had had, and I got really emotional, and I said, I'm by myself in this country. I don't know anybody, and it's Christmas time, and please don't reject me right now. I mean, just wait a couple of weeks. Just please. I mean, if anything, and I started crying. I said, I'm all alone. And she took me in her arms and she hugged me and wiped my tears and told me, I'm with you. I love you. You can come live with me. You can have this. I didn't need those things, but she was just really, making me feel like I was so loved, and I relaxed and I started to feel safe. And that was Christmas Eve. You can guess the rest. Next day, Christmas Day, the one day, and I told her this, the worst day of the year for me is Christmas and Christmas time, please. The one day that I am at my most vulnerable after having been with this borderline for X amount of, and holding her head while she threw up, and she did the whole 9 yards. And then she flipped on me and said, you are, what did she say? You are an unsafe person. You're trying to make me insane. You've been planning to make me crazy this whole time. I'm not going to therapy. I can't have anything to do with you. I don't want you to contact me. The day before, we're going to spend New Year's doing this. We're going to go do that. We're going to have gifts for each other. We're going to have this really great Christmas, and you're invited. And so the worst possible devaluation she could have done. So I completely hear what you're saying, that there's a vindictive twist of the knife they seem to need to do, despite me never having knowingly hurt her. You're talking about 6 years of doing that. I didn't have that, but mine was the same. Not only did I not hurt her, I was the best friend she'd ever had. I mean, I took care of her in ways nobody would. I mean, Superman, S on my chest. I mean, holy crap. Who wouldn't be in love with a guy doing this for you, And to then say that I was the most, destructive, untrustworthy, it was just, there's not even close to reality, and the pain and all that. So, yes, it does seem like there is a vindictive twist of the knife that they seem to need to do. You're not the only person who says that. Other people come on here and say they know exactly what they're doing. They're planning it out, and they wait and they plan out the worst possible time. And I've even said that they do that on an unconscious level, meaning they're not aware of it. But I want to be clear. I don't think that that's what's going on. That's the result. And the truth is, here's the hard truth. Even somebody who was really evil could not have invented a more hurtful betrayal than what they do. And this is the genius of their mental illness. They are a victim of their mental illness. Doesn't take away any responsibility at all. They are responsible, and karma will wait for them, and it will. You don't have to be thinking that, I want to get them. Don't, trust me, karma's coming for them. That's another thing I feel very sad, because whatever they did in a previous life to choose this life, I don't know. But they will have to be responsible for all of the pain that they've caused people that they didn't deserve. It's just the way it is. But it's also true that the genius of their disease, of their illness, their mental illness, is that it responds directly to the depth of intimacy that is created. So I gave you that whole story about what I went through because you could feel that for me, that was like among the most intimate thing I could share with anybody. To open myself up like that, and then for a guy like me to say, with tears in my eyes, please don't reject me. That's not my normal way of functioning. It's just, being with a borderline for, however many months it was. I mean, all of my defense mechanisms were down. That's the genius of the illness. It breaks down your defense mechanisms because everything is projection, right? So they will set things up without realizing it, or their illness will set things up so that you will experience what they live with. So however horrible the betrayal was that she did to me that I experienced, which was awful, easily, without a doubt, easily the most painful, sad, depressing Christmas, New Year's of my life, without a doubt. As horrific as that was for me, that's nothing in comparison to whatever was done to her when she was this. I'm an adult. I have a lot of adult experiences behind me. I'm going to be okay. But whatever it was that happened when she was this is not okay. The damage that was caused, it's making me tear up, is not okay. She has nothing to dig from, to recover. So me, with all of this, and I'm an intense guy. I've got a big heart, and I got a lot of feelings, and so when I create intimacy, it's deep intimacy. It's not your average run-of-the-mill intimacy. I got a lot of emotions here to share. So for me to give her, which is what was attractive about me to her, was that she wants that little baby wants nothing more than to be taken care of and to be held and to be loved and to be invited in. And I gave that to her. But it's the very thing that brings her right back to whatever it was that happened to her repeatedly in ways I can't even begin to imagine. And the only way she knows how to function is to push you away in the worst way possible, because it would feel like it was killing her. Now, of course, that's not true. If she could actually get therapy and have somebody who knew how to help her walk through things in her brain so that she wouldn't react, then things would be different. But they can't help it. And so for me, it was, X amount of months. For you, it was 6 years. And right at Christmas, there's no coincidence that it happened right at Christmas. It happened right at Christmas because that would have been the time of deepest emotional connection. And she felt it coming. So her disease started telling her whatever it was that was wrong with you, and it got worse and worse and worse. And she had this other person, and that she didn't know, obviously, that she didn't have an emotional connection with or any kind of intimate connection with. So she can project onto that person what it is she thinks she wants. And then in her mind, there's you, which is bad, and the other person, which is good. And you are bad because, in all honesty, you're making her feel loved. She can't tolerate it. It's intolerable. It makes me so sad when I think about it. It's awful. So for you, it took 6 years. For me, it took a few months. But it will come. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to address the rational expectation that we have when we think we get to know somebody. The more we get to know somebody, the stronger the bond, the more we can work through problems. Yeah, that will, because it's true, intimacy brings up problems in every relationship with everybody. So it's not, this happens a lot. This is why families fight at Christmas, because it's an intimate time and people's issues pop up, and you know what I mean? But it's because, but they stay together and they work through it and then they grow. That expectation, which is a rational expectation that you are having on somebody who is an adult, who's probably extremely intelligent, who's very able to communicate emotions, seemingly, super consciously mindless. She could like sit there and talk the talk like, oh my God, this is the most amazing conscious person that's ever existed. And that's what happened the day before. She played that role and knew exactly how to talk to me. And maybe she believed it. I can't imagine why she didn't. She probably meant every word she said. But then there's the disease, the illness, which is at the core is this broken. This little kid is broken. And feelings of love that they never had, for the first time they start to feel it, and it just destroys them. And the only way they know how to respond is out of their undealt with rage from when they were an infant. There's no logical, they don't have any memory of it. There's no logic behind it. I'm sure that there's neurological things broken in their brain. There's no way they can prevent it if they're untreated. If they're treated, as I understand it, borderlines that get treatment can get help. I've listened to interactions, and there's been people who come on the channel who are borderline, who have channels. I go and watch them, and they seem, but again, you never fucking know with a borderline. You never fucking know. And you have to understand that for me to talk like this is very unusual because I'm a counselor. And I strongly believe in helping people, and I strongly believe that people can recover. I mean, I've recovered against all odds. I could share you my life and how I've recovered, and the success and the health and everything that I have, the happiness and the joy that I have as the result of the things I've been through. So I know anybody can do it, but borderline is something I don't understand. And what I've seen is that it looks really hard. It's like asking a guy with one leg to run a marathon. It looks like really impossible, that whatever's broken in there, to ask them to think rationally on an emotional level when it comes to intimacy and attachment and connection. I don't know. There's one guy who left a comment in here, and I think that's probably accurate. I could be wrong. But he says that he basically, he gets to that point, and then he, if I'm remembering what he said, he tries to mimic intimacy. And that's fine. I have no judgment on that. Because we all do that to some degree. And if he can do that and keep doing that and not act on the impulse of wanting to split, then he will be as good as anybody. Because that's all we want. That's all I wanted from her. I knew that she split. I knew that there was a sociopathic disconnect there. I knew that she couldn't possibly didn't understand the depth of my feelings and what was going on. But I had this belief that she would at least had the ability to act as if. And that would have been enough for me. I'm okay with that. That I would have taken that as a conscious act of love, even though she wasn't feeling it. But the thing about borderlines is that they're pretty much incapable, until they get treatment, to not act on their emotional impulses. Just like this little infant has no ability to do anything other than act on her impulses. She doesn't have any other tools. So I'm sharing this with you so that you can look back and see you didn't do anything. It's not your fault. You're not unlovable. You probably did the right thing. You probably loved them and took care of them, and that created an intimacy that set a cascade of events that they were virtually incapable of avoiding. Which means, again, if you're with a borderline that is a full-on borderline and they aren't in treatment, this will happen. Just accept that. That's why if you're with a borderline that's untreated, my suggestion is to get out. Especially if you've experienced abuse and it's hurtful and you're trying to find out where your sense of self is, your identity, are you lovable, who you are, if you don't know where you're going in life, you're depressed, you're just an empty husk of who you used to be, you got to get out. The kindest thing you can do for the borderline is get out. And if you need to, you can tell them that you love them, but that the relationship is damaging to you and that you need to take care of yourself. And if they want to be with you, then you can say, I would like that too. Here's what I would request. Go get counseling from a psychologist who is qualified. Go for a couple times a week regularly for a year with somebody who treats borderline personality disorder, and then give me a call. I would love to talk to you. And you and I both know that they won't do that, because that will again show you, it will push through your denial that they love you the way you love them. They don't. As is evidenced by this individual at Christmas time, 6 years into the marriage, up and leave after 6 years. Who does that? All right, so that's it for me. I got a little emotional. So yeah, that's it. Oh, by the way, the little baby is crying over here because you haven't subscribed yet. And so if you want to make her feel better, just gently mouse over her cute little crying face and then subscribe, and she won't cry anymore. All right, that's it. Talk to you guys later.